2024. Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's see. Planning Commission members present this evening. We have Ms. Hugo, Ms. Coulter, Mr. Gellings, Mr. Yancho, Mr. Hoffman, our Planning and Zoning Administrator, Mr. Jeremy Smith, and from our planning consultant, Giffords Webster, we have Ms. Jill Boehm. Good to see you. We haven't seen you in a while. All right.
Sorry, Mr.
Yeah.
Is the speakers on? Can you not hear?
I couldn't hear anything he said.
Oh, is yours mic on?
Yep.
Maybe move it.
Try to speak up. Next item on our agenda is an opportunity for public comment. This would be to address the Planning Commission on anything that is not having a public hearing this evening. We do have
We have two public hearings
one for the gas station.
and one for the decks and pergolas.
Yeah. So if you're here to talk about the gas station,
Moratorium.
Gas station section.
ordinance amendment, or regulations regarding decks and pergolas, that kind of thing, there'll be something comes up shortly in the agenda. But if you'd like to address the Planning Commission for anything other than that, now would be the time to comment on that. Sir, is there something you want to address the Planning Commission on, or?
He's on the agenda.
He's A,
He's
new
A.
business A.
Okay. Okay. Very good. All right, so not seeing anyone else to speak or address the Planning Commission, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back up to the Planning Commission for approval of the minutes from October 10th, 2024. Mr. Secretary?
Mr. Chairman, I've looked over the minutes and I find them to be correct, and I would make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Motion by Mr. Yancho to approve the minutes as presented from October 10th. Is there support for that?
Support.
Ms. Hugo? All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Approval of the agenda. This seems like it's in a strange spot in the agenda. But any changes?
None.
Anyone like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Ms. Hugo to approve the agenda as presented, support by Mr. Yancho. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next item would be correspondence.
None outside of the public hearings that you have in front of you.
Okay. Think we have any old business?
None.
That brings us to new business. Zoning case 678. A request for zoning change. And this,
This evening is going to just be the informational meeting per the ordinance. We need to have an informational meeting in front of this board before we can have a public hearing. Mr. George is here in the audience that can present and explain exactly what he's trying to accomplish.
okay. Come up to the,
Yep.
Good evening.
good evening.
My name is Nick George. I've been a resident of Grand Blanc for 50 years, raised kids and grandkids, and I love it here. I do a little developing. I own a vacant lot at 7576 South Saginaw Street that I've had for over 20 years. And that's the property that appears in front of you for rezoning. It's been zoned professional office, which for 20 years, I have not been able to sell it, rent it, or make any kind of deal on it. There's not a market anymore for vacant or for office space. That seems to be a real problem. Great demand for retail space around. And I filed with the help of Mr. Smith to change from professional to neighborhood zoning. This week, would you believe, in 20-some years, I get an offer to buy the property, which there is a heaven. They want to put in a 50,000 square foot retail single store. So by that offer, I now am asking for you to consider from neighborhood to general commercial. Because the neighborhood only gives me up to 20,000, the general gives us to 60,000. The proposal will not impact any of the surrounding residential areas. I own the last piece of property in the township, the parcel right next to Grand Blanc City, if you guys might know where it's at. So I'm surrounded by retail, and across the street is Ace Hardware, the Grand Mall, and as we all know, the development in the city now with retail north of me. So it's just a natural blend that could really benefit me and as well as our community. And I also am hoping that by updating some of these zoning laws, that we could do a little more in our community. Because if you look around, we have special office support, we have offices, all the blue areas around in our zoning would be just some great spots. I have some property on Holly Road that for 25 years, people look at it and want different things, but we're zoned office. And so my urging tonight, and I thank the board for consideration, would be to look at it and consider from office to general commercial. If there's any questions I can ask, I'm here.
I guess one of the things I notice is the shape of the property itself.
That's correct.
I know you don't need to, probably don't want to reveal who you're got an offer from. How much property would they need? Because I was thinking of this as neighborhood commercial, but I definitely wouldn't want to make that whole piece of property neighborhood commercial.
The only way that I could get out of that property is to sell the whole thing, number one. The back portion is medium-density housing, the last piece in the township. We're leaving that alone. I'm asking to bump a few more feet in the back, and it's really an open space in the front where they're going to be at. And also in the back, I'm faced with another dilemma. There's a tremendous amount of wetlands back there. So we can't develop all those, 7, 8 acres back there. And so to answer your question, it would probably be about 4 or 5 acres in the front portion of it. And I would have the tendency to think that that back area would just be just a natural area.
Could, Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, so I was thinking, again, to neighborhood commercial, there's basically a dogleg, is what I'm going to call it. It's a dogleg more along those.
Yep.
So at the beginning, it was in the front that would match the back lot lines of your neighbors was going to be that, and then all the way to the next corner, almost like the start of the dogleg. So everything past the dogleg, which is the major length of it, is going to stay medium density, correct?
Correct.
Right. You're only looking for the smaller leg to be now general commercial, but what in our packets was neighborhood commercial.
Right.
That-
And asking to go from general to, or from neighborhood to general.
Well, that's the new one tonight,
Yes, sir.
right? Okay, so
The
the original packet was PO to neighborhood.
Right, and before, and when this was filled out, Mr. George didn't have this purchase
Right.
agreement, so we didn't know
Right.
where we were gonna go with this, and then I talked to him, the other day, and now he has the purchase agreement, so, the general commercial is what's gonna be, noticed for.
So would it essentially be from corner to corner would be a line drawn? Is that kind of? Yeah. So you're thinking of like, would it be corner to
Yeah,
corner?
I'm thinking just
Corner.
clean it right up there. And there's a hill, it goes uphill. And I think we can just clean some of that up, put some of that dirt in the back or leave it in the front. And that ties in with all the retail that's adjoining me.
Right. Okay, just to clarify, so we would be splitting the parcel, and the front would be general commercial, and then that
They have
back
different
area would
zoning
be-
on the same parcel?
So currently, the parcel is zoned in the front office and the rear is medium-density multifamily as it sits today.
Oh,
So he's
okay,
asking for the office essentially to be extended to that dogleg, if you will, like Mr. Hoffman said.
Okay.
Instead of office, general commercial.
but the
So it'll
rest-
still have, then the rest of it will still be medium-density multifamily.
Okay,
So it'll still continue to have the dual zoning. He's just asking to have the commercial portion of it extended
okay, I got it,
south.
thanks,
Yep.
thank you. That makes a lot of sense to me.
So neighborhood commercial by right is 20,000.
Correct. And then you can do a special land use up to 60 in neighborhood commercial.
That's what I was curious. I couldn't remember what the top end was.
Is there a difference with this board with the land use versus going to general commercial? Is there that big a difference?
If we approve or make a recommendation for approval for a zoning change, we have to look at what could go in there. What's, I guess, worst case that could go in there? That's,
So it's not only size, it's also use too.
Yeah, well, it spells it out pretty well in both neighborhood and general.
Yeah, I mean, tonight I was coming under the assumption that was neighborhood
Oh,
commercial.
yeah.
Now that it's general commercial, it is a different twist.
Yes, and the intensity of said uses
Right.
definitely amplifies in general commercial.
Right.
So, but again, tonight is just an informational meeting. Whatever way Mr. George wants to go for the notice, we'll go that way. And if we need to discuss it further at the meeting in December, then we can do that further. But correct me if I'm wrong, Jill, like we discussed earlier, if it was noticed for general and the board said that's too high and wanted to make it neighborhood, would we have to renotice? Or no?
It's a different request.
But it's a less intense use.
It is. Usually you would have that identified up front so that the people who do receive the notice have the benefit of understanding. Maybe there be people who get the notice who feel like they come because it says general commercial and then they're like, oh, well, if it's neighborhood commercial, it's different. I might be okay. And
Yeah.
I think it's best practice to make a decision before you notice.
Yeah, and we try to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, to the
Normally,
extent that you
but-
can. And I
yes.
would just note, your future land use map still identifies that area as office. So,
in the city, I know they have different zoning, but I guess the mall itself would be a general commercial.
It is,
in our
Mr.
zone, right?
Mr. George provided in one of the other maps, it shows the city of Grand Blanc's zoning district as well. And I
I
believe,
think it was B2 across the street
Yep.
and then B1 next door.
Yeah, on the bottom of my thing, the city calls it neighborhood business
Yep.
and community business. So adjoining, and right across the street from me is Ace Hardware, which is community business for them, which would maybe apply general commercial for us.
I don't know their requirements, so I can't speak to that effect, but I mean, he's surrounded by commercial along Saginaw and across the street.
Mr. Hoffman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I will, if it's only the size that you're looking at, and the person who wants to use it would fit in neighborhood commercial, I personally would be more comfortable with neighborhood commercial. I personally would be helpful more with neighborhood commercial, because when we change this, it just doesn't go to what we hope that you do. You could sell this tomorrow and turn it over to somebody else, and they could do a bunch of different things. The other thing that I'm kind of questioning here is we've had a good track record of kind of sliding the zones. For example, if right next door to it is a neighborhood business, which I think we would consider neighborhood commercial, and then up it to general commercial, and then back down to medium density and back down to PO, it doesn't flow with what we've tried to do rest in the community. So I want to be basically crossing my fingers that the only thing that you need is more size, which you can get in neighborhood commercial with special land use, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's just my thoughts, 2 cents on it.
I think,
Let me just show you guys something. This was drafted in by the buyer, so this may help you a little bit.
I'll share. I think that must be north.
No,
Thank you.
just the opposite. Oh, no, you're right. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. That's north.
JJ, I didn't give you one.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Oh, I see it here.
I passed mine down to his.
I guess, Mr. Hoffman, I feel the same way you do. I'd be much more comfortable with neighborhood commercial in here. It fits better with what's around there. And it doesn't just open up the doors to what might be able to go in if it's general
Right.
commercial. I think that, anyway, go with Mr. Hoffman.
Yeah, I'd be
Gotcha.
inclined to go along with a special land use, depending on what the use was, to increase the size from 20,000 to 50,000. I mean, there are some other things that we wouldn't want or wouldn't be acceptable to the community in that location, but it would be a lot easier to go to general commercial if we knew what the use was intended to be.
And even if we did, though, we can't
Yeah, if
rely
we-
on that. It
right,
could change
right.
5 years from, that could never be built
Right.
5 years from now,
Yeah.
a new use, and now they have the right to do what anybody wants to do with it.
Yeah.
And sadly, we've seen that, and that's why we have to be careful about that.
Yeah, I'm inclined to support what Mr. Hoffman is suggesting, to kind of go with neighborhood commercial. There's a state bank, right, which is right,
Right next to me.
yeah, which is kind of a neighborhood commercial use, so,
I think their
Their office.
office.
Banks are allowed in office.
office, yeah,
Just saying
right,
from
I'm
a
sorry.
use.
Yeah, it's more of a neighborhood commercial
lower.
use than a, yep. mhm.
Low use.
So you're saying neighborhood with the larger footprint?
Yeah, it's an extra step you'd have to go through.
We do, it's special land use gets done the same night as site plan review. It's the first step. It's basically just it's almost a variance type thing that says, hey, this is what they're doing. They need to go to this X amount of square footage. Is that acceptable? Yes or no for retail? Yes, and then the next item on the agenda is the site plan. So it's not a huge step, but it is another extra added layer.
And I think it's, I can't speak for obviously the township board, but I think they would probably be more willing to do a rezoning for something that wasn't I guess, neighborhood commercial versus general commercial, I would think. It seems to fit better.
I can see that. I can see where
We
the,
can't predict. but-
right.
Mr. Yancho?
For Mr. George's benefit, would you be able to speak to some uses that he could not put in there if it was neighborhood commercial,
I mean, you get,
compared to general commercial?
so you want to know what he can do in general that he couldn't do in neighborhood, is what you're saying?
Yes,
Right, you probably,
yes, in the ordinance.
Yeah, and I think he's aware, because we know it's going to be retail. It's the size that's going to be the question. It's not going to be the use, it's going to be the size.
And not a marijuana dispensary.
No, we don't allow those. We have a moratorium on that, so no, that's, no,
So those are all in the ordinance.
yes. And he's aware of the ordinances and what can and can't go in there, and his use fits within the ordinance, yes.
And with that size property.
Let me just say one thing. If it's marijuana, I'll be the first guy to fight it. I have business
I was just-
in Colorado. Okay? I've been there 48 years. When I went in there, Colorado Springs was the Disney World of the U.S. Today, I still have 2 furniture stores left. Homeless, graffiti.
Wow.
We chased 17 people on the back alleyway of one of my stores. They take cardboard, they take the old mattresses we throw in the dumpsters, live there for 4 or 5 days, set it on fire and they leave.
Wow.
Graffiti, and it all happened 5 years ago with marijuana.
I didn't mean to imply that you were gonna. But I know that there are some things that,
Marijuana, we're gonna have a Nathan Jay's over here.
Yeah.
And Mike, you wanted the gold key, right?
So you said this is a preliminary,
This is
basically.
preliminary,
Input from the-
yes. He's just bringing in, so that way you know you will see next month. We will set the public hearing for neighborhood commercial, yes?
I think you're gonna have a much easier road.
If we can make the job work,
Yep.
whether we call A or B,
I don't think it's going to be a problem either way.
Yeah.
Like you and I discussed at length about this, and I think this is,
hey, I'm looking to you for advice.
yep,
I'm good.
yep, okay.
I think we all wanna make it work.
Yeah.
neighborhood commercial with a larger special land use, I think gets what you need to do without exposing the township to unexpected things that could happen. So it limits to what you want to do, doesn't expose to other dangers.
Center retail,
Right, right, right.
whether it's a mattress or a shoe, it's,
Right.
Anything else we need to talk about regarding this case, or?
I think we're all set. You're good. We'll,
hey, I'm gonna sleep good tonight. Thanks.
Where will everyone put their political signs? That's what I'm wondering.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Do we need a motion or anything?
Nope.
No.
nope.
Okay, next item on our agenda is zoning case 674. I'm not sure what the N means.
That's just, we're keeping all the text amendments under
Oh, okay, I see.
674, and this is instead of numbering them again, we just did letters instead, so we're at N.
Well, this is regarding the decks and similar accessory structure.
Yes.
We had something in our packet.
Yep, so we've had lengthy discussion on this over the last couple months in the packet. You could see from Jill and Andy, they worked very diligently on giving us new language on how to address the pergolas, attached, detached, covered decks, setbacks. I think it's very, very well detailed, and it gives me and my team the ability to regulate these now and to explain it to the residents in a manner that they should be able to understand as well. You don't have to be an attorney to understand this, and it's very black and white.
Questions, comments from planning commission?
Just a reminder, this is not an approval, it's a recommendation to the township board, please.
I've read through it and compared it to what we've discussed, and I'm ready to move it along, actually. I would make a motion to approve this change.
Recommend
Recommend
approval to the
approval.
township.
Recommend approval to the township board.
Support.
Oh, we gotta open the public hearing first.
If there's anyone here that would like to address the planning commission regarding zoning case 674N, text amendment regarding decks and similar accessory structure. Doesn't look like it. We'll close the public hearing, bring it back up to Planning Commission. We had a motion by Mr. Yancho to recommend approval to the Township Board, support by Mr. Hoffman. Any other discussion?
The only thing I'll say is, following Mr. Yancho, we've discussed this several different times, and thanks to staff for the language reiterating what we were looking for, so thanks.
All right, I guess a vote is in order then. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes 5-0. Next item on our agenda is gas station.
So again, this one, we've discussed at length. The language, again, is very well thought out. It is in your packet as well. I provided a map that Mr. Yancho was looking for of all the current gas stations that are in the area. And the way the language reads is that it would be 1 mile as the road goes, not as the crow flies, between any other new gas stations being built to any of the current gas stations that are already existing. The other issue that we put in there is that they will be allowed to, the current gas stations will be allowed to expand their sites without any repercussions going forward. That way, because we're creating a nonconformity, right? It's the nonconformity of being the distance, so they would have to come back and have their site approved for minimal things, any little thing, they would have to come back to the board to have approved, whereas minor things I can do in-house, but, or the site plan approval can do it, but, that's the other language that was added in there too. So it's a mile as the road goes between current gas stations and any new one with proper zoning, and then the ability to expand their business without having to come back to the board for any nonconformities.
We did have quite a bit of discussion about how far apart it should be. It was noticed as 1 mile.
It was noticed as 1 mile, and that's my fault. I know we had talked about having 2 and then backing it down potentially to 1 if it saw fit today. So I apologize on that. If we need to make it 2, we need to renotice it, and we can do that, still be under the moratorium if we want to go to the December board planning commission meeting and renotice it if need be, if you're so inclined to make it 2 miles. But if not, if 1 mile, because I know a lot of the discussion centered around 1 mile. So that's why in my head, we left it at 1 mile, and I apologize, it wasn't noticed as 2. But again, they have to have proper zoning, and you can see on the map, and if you compare it to your zoning map, the north end of town is pretty well saturated, and you won't get any more gas stations on the north end of town. South end of town, southwest corners, southeast corner
Right.
has room for potential gas stations with proper zoning.
So am I clear, if we want a 2-mile limit, we would have to renotice it, and so it wouldn't be, it wouldn't go up to the township board at their next meeting? It would have to be,
Correct.
and the meeting would be, with the 2-mile, and it would be after the end of the moratorium?
No, we'd still be under the moratorium
still
date.
under
If
the
we
mo-
still want to make it, I can push it through and make sure that it's, because we meet twice for the township board, twice a month. So before the moratorium ends, December 25th, it will be in front of the board regardless if we want to do 1 mile today or 2 miles next month. Yes.
I'm in favor of 2 months, or 2 miles, rather. If the general feeling is that we have enough gas stations and we don't want to, have more gas stations, then why would, and, the difference between 1 mile and 2 mile, I don't think is a big deal. somebody has to, drive an extra mile to get to the nearest gas station. Why wouldn't we go with 2 miles limit?
My only issue with that is that if you look at the map, and a mile gives opportunities for some, because as an ordinance, you can limit, but you can't exclude. If you do 2 miles, we won't have any more gas stations in Grand Blanc Township. And it's not that we want to eliminate them completely. We're trying to control them where there's already, as you can see, on the north end of town and kind of if you look and go northeast on that map, we're very well saturated with gas stations. We're trying to limit, but we can't exclude. And if you look at Attorney Laddie's letter that's in your packet as well, he alludes to that. So I personally would caution at 2. This board has the latitude to do either way. And it will be a recommendation again to the township board. But just know, we only have 5 board members here tonight out of 9.
Okay.
So you
Yeah, I see what
can,
you're saying. If we
we
do-
have to be careful regardless. We have time to do this before the moratorium's done,
I got you.
but 4-1 doesn't give us majority and doesn't recommend for approval. We need 5-0 tonight
Right,
for a majority.
okay. Then if we go with the 1 mile, it goes up to the township board could say 2 miles, right?
Either way, the township board has a latitude they have final say. So you can recommend for approval, but they can change it to 2 if they would like to, yes. Or they could back it down to a 1/2 mile.
Yeah. Okay, and my other question is, there's in the southwest corner of the township, there isn't, nearly the congestion of gas stations. but
Mostly
that's
residential.
yeah,
It's
right.
predominantly 80% residential in the
Yeah,
southwest corner of
so,
town, so you won't get one there anyways.
Right,
Because minimally, you have to have neighborhood commercial to have a gas station.
yeah, yeah. So, the rest of the township is pretty well, well-distributed gas stations currently, so that's why I feel we don't need more gas stations. But given the fact that, we only have 5 people, I would go along with the 1 mile if you could convey to I don't know whether anybody else agrees with me that 2 mile, but you could convey that we did have some discussion about
2
2
miles.
mile.
I can definitely, when I present to the township board, I can definitely make comments to that, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Hoffman?
2 things. One, so we have to have a majority of the full planning commission, even though the full planning commission isn't here.
Yeah.
Correct.
When did that change?
That was brought to we've always done it that way.
That,
That's a common,
It is, I
I don't-
haven't double-checked your bylaws.
Yep.
But it should be in there if that's the case.
Attorney Laddie and I have had discussions regarding this, and that's,
I do.
whether it was done in the past or not, I don't know, but that's,
Okay, that's great news. Thanks
Yes,
for, you
yes.
learn something every day. The second
I
thing.
don't think it applies to everything. I think they're different things, aren't they? Depending on what it just seems like that's the discussion we had.
So for like our recommendation that we just went up to the board, if all 5 of us didn't say move it up,
you can, it just wouldn't be, you would have to have all yes to recommend for approval. You would, at 4-1, that wouldn't be a recommend for approval, that would actually be a no vote, right? That would be.
It would be, and I was looking and I don't have, well, I might actually have old bylaws in here. But that's where I think that would be, and we can look that up, just to find the language for you so that you're clear on it. And it's not an uncommon standard
Requirement,
for
yeah.
certain things. And it's not in the Michigan Planning or Zoning Enabling Act, but it is typically in bylaws, and that's why often they're not remembered by
just
everyone.
makes it really hard for us that do come and are here when we're supposed to be here
Yes.
to get our job done okay.
Great, and if it is, and so we'll double check, if it is in your bylaws, you'll need a supermajority of the membership to make that change, but you can certainly do so.
The other thing is, I do remember the last time, we had a we actually, I thought the consensus was that we moved it up to 2, knowing that we weren't going to do it at 2, so that we could move it down.
And that, like I said,
that
that
was
was,
our
that
thought.
was my fault, because I know there was talk of 2, but everything centered around 1, so that's why I had it noticed at 1, but I did it at, that was, like I said, that was my fault.
Well,
You're right, yeah, I
thinking-
remember
Yeah,
that.
thinking of other people that aren't here, I don't know that there would be a consensus to move it up to 2, and say, let's redo it. Especially with the information that came back. But, so
I
but
talked-
the board could.
Well, just so you know, I've spoke with Mr. Bush this morning, and he was in favor of the mile. So I don't know if that helps you in that case. I didn't talk to the other members, but if I remember correctly, Mr. Andre and Mr. Johnson both were in favor of a mile at the last meeting, so.
Yep. Lastly, something that dawned on me was, so many, right, along those lines. And I think, like on a corner, like if there was 4 on one corner, that seems daunting. But is 2 on a corner something that we would be rather live with? So that would be, like, we would say within a mile, but if there's already 1 on a corner spot, would we allow somebody to go kitty corner just for traffic patterns? Having only it on one side, well, they can only go to that if they're, or easy to go to if they're driving a certain way. Therefore, we could have, I know we're trying to say don't have too many, and 4 on one corner would feel too many to me, but maybe 2 so that it would help traffic pattern. Is that something that anybody would be interested in, or?
I'm not sure how you could zone for that.
Yeah, it could be a bit, it's not that it couldn't be done, but as it sits today, we would have to start over again. And like I said, that moratorium is going to be up in about another month and a half, so as with any text amendment, we could move forward, and if it doesn't work for 6 months, let's just say we run it for 6 months and see where it goes. And then if somebody comes in and applies and wants to change something, we can take a look at it again. So it's not that it can't be revisited and changed down the road, but I think if we want to adhere to the wishes of the township board and limit these things, what you have in front of you does that, but doesn't eliminate them. And if we want to look at that requirement down the road, my opinion would be to tackle that. That's not going to be a quick thing that we could turn around in a month. That's something we're going to need a couple, probably meetings to discuss that.
It was an
Yeah,
idea of, the idea here is maybe instead of, oh, there's one, and then a mile later, there's one, and there's 2 right next to each other, might not be as visible in my own head.
I understand.
And could help with traffic patterns. So that's the only reason I was bringing that up.
Yep. No,
Because if we say you can't be a mile apart, well, the one right across the street, which actually could be probably more hidden and help traffic, wouldn't be allowed, which that's actually where we want it to be.
sure, I could see that.
Okay, interesting thought. Thanks for bringing
Yes.
that. The bylaws, it's possible we can either get an email that tells us where we find those or a copy of them, because we brought this up once or twice, something that's like we wanted to look up. and,
I will
I don't even know.
try and find those.
You have public comment that you also want.
Yeah. All right. Anything else before I go to public comment?
No.
All right, we will open up the public comment portion of the meeting for any comments regarding the gas station proposed changes. Yes, sir.
Hello.
I think we've got Mr. Oliver.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Stephen Oliver. I represent a company called Murphy USA. You're probably familiar with us having gas stations, convenience stores in front of Walmarts, and we're now expanding beyond the Walmarts. I believe we were talking to Mr. Smith for several months earlier this year, April, May, June, about a property over here at Dort Highway and Saginaw, where the old family video is, the vacant building. And I guess we submitted an application apparently days, weeks, or not too far after the ordinance, the moratorium went into effect. Weren't aware it was happening, but anyway. A little bit about my history. I have 40 years in the industry. I was really young. I spent 20 years in operations. I spent the last 20 years in real estate development. And I just want to I understand what you think you might be doing, but I want to know if have you consider, what are the unintended consequences of what you're considering? Essentially what you're doing, not officially and not overtly, banning gas convenience stores. You've already admitted that even if it was a 1-mile radius, the southwest part of town probably wouldn't get a store, which is probably true regardless whether you have this ordinance or not. But the stores that are remaining, and I've seen this, and I'm going to use Oakland, California as an example where they have done this, and they've probably been in place for 25 or 30 years, where they have done miles restrictions, they ban certain products, and what it's done is it's given small, unsophisticated, dirty operators a license to print money, not invest in the community, not invest in their stores, not invest in their employees, not try to maintain a standard. Whereas when you allow competition to come in, you raise the level for everybody. Everybody has to compete to whoever the new guy is in town, essentially. And what happens is that everybody gets better, everybody gets smarter, and the guy that was just there trying to I guess, milk the monies from the consumer, he's eventually going to have to either improve or the marketplace is going to make a decision for him to go away. And that's not a bad thing. It also gives the consumer some choice. And what we're doing now is potentially limiting consumer choice. And in the end, what happens is the consumer ends up paying with higher prices. That's a fact. I want you to really just think about the unintended consequences. I guess the other thing is, and I understand this all happened because of drugstores that were closing and gas stations were investigating, or I was looking, Sheetz was looking, I'm sure, investigating to come in, and you just didn't want a plethora of gas stations. Well, now you're going to have a plethora of closed restaurants, Red Lobster, TGI Fridays, and then today, Advanced Auto announced 700 stores closing. It's happening. There has to be a use for this retail. The city's going to be losing tax revenue, sales tax revenue. There's some unintended consequences by limiting legal uses for commercial use. My opinion.
Thank you.
Anyway, I hope you make the right decision. I understand if you don't,
Tell,
but
right?
time will tell. And
Well, we appreciate your different perspective than
so,
what we were, no, it's good to hear a different opinion.
so don't go 2 miles. Any questions, anything? I mean, it's,
Nope. Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. What is our experience with redevelopment of gas stations? It seems like once a gas station leaves, it's never a gas station again, is that
It's hard to,
because of the environmental law?
there's environmental, and it's better now than it was ever before because of the different, I'm sure Mr. Oliver could speak to different type of gas tanks, storage tanks underground that are used now as opposed to 30, 40 years ago where they were very, they were leaking. I believe they're now fiberglass.
They're now double wall fiberglass. They all have interstitial testing. Even the piping is double wall.
Procedures and valves and all of that. So
There is a 30-year warranty on them. I'm not going to say they don't fail because there have been failures.
Sure.
But it's not what it was in 1980.
But I think what the township board is looking at, because of these Rite Aids that we're closing, they want to see other retail at those stores. And at those stores, there's also gas stations about a half mile from each one of those stores already. They don't want to see these 10, 12, 13, 14, 20,000 square foot buildings taken over as gas stations where we already have a plethora of gas stations on that north end. So that's kind of where all this stemmed from. And to his point, there was, in the south end of town, there would be more opportunity for that. They would just have to be more in industrial zoning. Not that it couldn't be done there, but it's not ideal. But there is some, it's just there's residential in that southeast or southwest quadrant, so. This comes from the township board. We're here today to, at their wishes.
Can I ask a question? Has anybody approached those landowners of those closed Rite Aids or CVS, people who own those stores, what interest they've had?
Well, it's
The Rite Aid here at Hill and
Belsey.
Dort?
Belsey. Oh, there's one at Hill and Dort. Yep, that was temporarily was used as a Halloween store. Yep. And now, and actually as part of the minutes, we need to read, there's a letter in your packet from Mr. Engelhardt, who owns the Rite Aid at Hill and Belsey. So we need to read that. He's in opposition of this, but we need to kind of read through his letter, and then put it as part of the minutes as well.
Oh, this is it here. No? No, that's Mr., no?
I remember reading it.
Oh,
Pages.
Yeah.
It's a two-page.
okay. This one. Oops, sorry. Well, that I want to read every word is.
No, we don't have to read the Reader's Digest version is he's opposed to it. He's been approached by a gas station or two already regarding his store to put a gas station there. So to Mr. Oliver's point, he has been approached by a gas station, but again, there's at least 2 gas stations within less than a mile of that Rite Aid store.
Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not to beleaguer the point and go backwards in the meeting, but this is precisely why the earlier applicant, hey, let me just go to general commercial because I need to have a bigger size. And that just opens the door up of everything else that come in afterwards that, it wasn't planned for before along those. So, not to do those type of things. So we got this letter. Do we also get the email?
That was not formally
Oh, to us?
submitted. That was sent to you from Scott,
Okay.
Supervisor Bennett. That was just for your information. There was no formal submission to the planning commissioners regarding that letter.
I do think it's good to know that there was another community member that said, hey, you know what, I've got a property that you'd like to be watched out for, which I'm happy to say, my first 15-year term on this commission, and now we do that, and I appreciate them doing that.
Yeah.
So,
And for context, that one is currently vacant.
right.
Has no rate aid on it at this point,
Oh, right,
but has a gas station right across the street from it.
right. Which kind of led me, not, it's
Gave
like,
you the idea for, yep.
hey, wait a second, right next to it might be exactly where you want to put it, as opposed to every half mile down the street.
Across, I agree with you, across the street for competing traffic
Yeah.
is something to look at, because if you're going, for Saginaw Street, for example, if you can't cross 3 lanes over.
Right.
And you're doing 50, 60 miles an hour, it'd be hard to make even though there's a left-hand turn, so that's maybe a bad example, but I see
or-
your point.
Or other people driving 60 or 70 miles an hour, where you want to do something.
When you're driving 45 the speed
Right,
limit, or 50
right.
the speed limit, yeah.
I just had a thought regarding fishing. Some types of fish, there's a slot. You can't be too small and you can't be too big. It's almost like you need to be within X number of feet of the gas
Right,
station.
right.
Or so far away. That's
Away.
just an interesting thought to
Yeah,
have
yeah,
from your,
yeah, that's great.
so, you can pass that comment on to the,
Yeah, I'll pass that one along to the township board too, sure.
well, I meant Mr. Hoffman's.
Yes. Yes, no, I will definitely bring that up as something that could be looked at in the future, but they're expecting to have language in front of them to make a decision before the moratorium passes.
And at this point, I mean, just because I'm going to make a motion doesn't mean we can't continue talking.
I
Go ahead.
think we still have the public hearing open.
Yeah, so just, do you have any final comments? You're good? Okay, so we can,
Close the public
Yep.
comment portion, bring it back up.
So we could have further conversation after, but I, especially knowing that we want to probably look at tweaking this after this, along those lines, I'm in favor of moving this to the township board under the 1 mile. As stated, move this up for recommendation to the township board.
I agree.
Any other discussion from planning commission members? All right, so
Motion?
motion by Mr. Hoffman to move this up to the township board for
their approval.
and support by Mr. Yonko. All right, a vote is in order. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And according to Mr. Laddie's letter, there are opportunities to, if we're concerned about it being too restrictive, we could allow the submission of a market saturation study and allow the commission to reduce the distance if deemed appropriate.
All right, so the next item on our agenda would be committee reports, township board, anything? Other than I got reelected.
I got reelected. Supervisor Bennett and the other trustees were also reelected, and congratulations to Mr. Yancho on being elected as our new treasurer. Yeah, we'll be sworn in on Wednesday, right here in the boardroom,
At noon, I believe.
at noon, yes, I'm sorry.
ZBA, we don't have a representative here, right?
We had a ZBA meeting for 1204 Maple Road. It was their second submission in less than a year. They are a residential home on neighborhood commercial, so that anytime they expand their nonconformity, they have to go in front of the zoning board of appeals. They started building a lean-to off the back, and the board, there was only 4 members out of the 7, or 4 out of 5 present. It was a split decision, 2-2, so that was a denial. The building department is working with them currently to either tear it down or modify it in a way that they could come back to the ZBA for reapplication.
Okay. Site plan review, we actually had a couple today. One was Vinyl Sash,
Yes,
had to do with their
barbed wire.
barbed wire fencing. They had actually already installed it. But they've upgraded things. There's been barbed wire there for years and years, so it's just kind of continuation of what was there. We approved that. And then there's a parking lot expansion. They wanted to use the bit millings. And there was some gravel parking on site, so they're going to use the bit millings on both areas. And there's also some asphalt paving there currently. That was approved by the planning, or site plan review committee as well.
There was another site that had been approved using bit millings in the past, so that's why that was approved, because the ordinance states that you can use gravel for a year, but then after that, you have to have asphalt or concrete. And the previous owners brought in engineering specs to show that the bit millings, as they get compressed, are just as good as asphalt. So we already have that, and that was already approved on a site in Tri-Park. And so the site plan review members decided that that was a acceptable expansion for their parking lot, especially since it's just going to be outdoor storage, just like the other site as well. So there's not going to be unloading and loading on those bit millings. It'll just be outdoor storage.
Question, do we allow barbed wire? I missed what you said about barbed wire, and do we,
We do if it's
Not by
approved.
right, but if it's approved by the planning commission or site plan review committee.
okay.
We
How
try to
often-
limit it, yeah.
Yeah. How big an issue is that in the township? I'm just curious. Is there?
Not really. It's
Yeah.
vinyl sash, so he's protecting, the book says that if it's protecting personal property, then it can be approved by the planning commission, and he's worried and has had theft at his business because he has metal scraps that people were stealing.
Oh, okay. That's just curious.
Anything else from planning and zoning?
We will have a meeting. The next meeting will be December 5th. You'll be seeing Mr. George for his public hearing. There's a couple other items, so that'll be their last meeting for the year. Something to keep in the back of your mind, we're working on the new agenda dates for next year. The The first one will be January 2nd. We'll talk about it at the next meeting, but we will be moving that one to the following week due to the holidays. That's too close to the holidays. So we'll be pushing it back to the 9th. I'll be asking to be moving it to the 9th. How's that?
Any other business? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support?
Motion by Mr. Yancho to adjourn at 7:55 PM, support by Mr. Hoffman. All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, we are adjourned.